You may think you arrived here by accident, a random click, a forgotten thought. But what if this moment was always part of a deeper alignment? As you listen, allow yourself to slow down. Let your breath lengthen. Let your awareness soften. Like mist rolling across a still lake. You're not just watching a video. You're standing at the edge of something ancient, a memory you didn't know you had. If this message resonates, it's because a part of you has been waiting to remember. Welcome. This space is here for you. Before we begin, take a moment to notice where you are, physically, emotionally, energetically. Whether it's day or night, whether you're curled beneath blankets or walking under trees, this story will meet you there. What unfolds now is not a teaching, but a remembering, a journey beyond belief into the living field of energy, frequency, and perception. Subscribe if you're ready to feel something deeper. Now let us begin, because the portal doesn't open out there. It opens within. There is a moment, so brief and quiet it often goes unnoticed, when you look at a clock and forget what time it said, or when someone calls your name and you recognize it not as a label, but as a vibration pulling you inward. It's in these forgotten seconds that the real portal often opens, not with thunder or revelation, but with a stillness so gentle it feels like nothing at all. And yet, that nothing is the doorway. You didn't land here by algorithm or accident. This is not just a story, and you are not just a listener. Something older than memory, older than your name, brought you here. A soft pulse from beneath the surface of your thoughts, drawing you toward a truth you didn't know you'd buried. Most people mistake this sensation for coincidence. They shrug off the synchronicities, the uncanny timings, the dreams that arrive like riddles. But you didn't. Some part of you noticed. Some part of you paused long enough to feel the tremble. In the air around this moment, the subtle recognition that this, whatever this is, matters. That is coherence beginning to bloom. That is the signal becoming audible. And as you listen now, you are not hearing a story unfold. You are remembering a shape your soul has always known. You see, reality isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. This idea sounds poetic, even abstract. But what if it is simply literal? Every cell in your body is pulsing, vibrating, sending frequency into the field that surrounds you. Not metaphorically, but physically, electromagnetically, quantum mechanically. Scientists have long discovered that the act of observation alters the outcome of experiments. They call it the observer effect. But that experiment is not limited to labs and photons. It is life itself. You are not a spectator of reality. You are a participatory signal within it. Every emotion you carry, every belief you repeat, every silent assumption you make about yourself or others hums like a broadcast tower into the space around you. This space listens. The field listens. And it listens not to your desires or your spoken affirmations, but to the harmony or disharmony beneath them. That's why you can say, I am safe 100 times and still feel panic. Because the field doesn't respond to words. It responds to vibration. What are you really emitting beneath the sentence? And this is where it begins to change. When you stop seeing your inner world as private. When you understand that your nervous system is not a container, but an instrument. Every trauma unresolved, every joy embodied, every habit of attention you've cultivated, they are not locked inside you. They ripple outward. And more than that, they shape what flows back toward you. You are not manifesting from thoughts alone. You are calling forth experiences that match your most dominant energetic coherence. This is the reason some people repeat the same emotional patterns for years, even when they've done the work. They've treated healing as intellectual, but reality answers the body, the breath, the feeling tone that lingers when the conscious mind is quiet. Pause. Feel that. Not the words I'm saying, but the resonance they stir in you. Is there a part of you that recognizes this? That wants to lean closer, even if it doesn't know why? You're not just listening. You're being tuned. And this tuning, this quiet recalibration, isn't happening for the first time. You've felt this before, perhaps in the silence between two songs, or in the strange déjà vu of a new place that feels like home. Perhaps in the ache you carry for something you can't name, a longing not for something lost, but for something you haven't yet remembered. That longing is sacred. It is not a flaw. It is the compass of awakening, a whisper from the version of you that already lives in alignment. That version exists, not as fantasy, but as a frequency. And the more you soften into coherence, the more it becomes accessible. This is not about becoming something new. It is about shedding the static between you and the version of yourself that already knows how to live without fear. That version is not elsewhere. It is layered within you, like a radio station waiting to be tuned into. Still, we are conditioned to ignore this. The world teaches noise, hurry, metrics, validation. We become addicted to the outer world because it distracts from the dissonance. Within, we scroll, compare, measure, and hustle, hoping to find the external evidence that will give us permission to feel safe, loved, or free. But you were never meant to wait for permission. You are meant to choose it, to generate it. This is not easy, but it is simple. It begins by noticing what you notice, by honoring the moments your system contracts, and instead of numbing, you listen. What does this fear want to protect you from? Whose voice do you hear when you doubt? Yourself? What would your body feel like if it believed you were already enough? These are not questions to fix you. They are keys to remembering your original state. There was a time before trauma, before conditioning, when you trusted your signal, when you didn't question whether joy was allowed, when you didn't shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort. That self is still here, under the survival programs, under the inherited stories, under the cellular memories of generations who were told it was safer to conform than to radiate. And this is not just about you. You are not healing in isolation. You are part of a network, a constellation of awakeners, tuning not only for yourself, but for the entire field. Every time you choose presence over panic, compassion over control, coherence over chaos, you send out a signal that others feel, even if they don't know why. You make the field more stable. You become a lighthouse for those still lost in the storm. And you do it without preaching. You do it by becoming. But becoming is not an arrival. It is a remembering. And remember this, every time you return to awareness, even for a second, you are walking through the portal again. It never closes, not really. It simply waits. And when you're ready, not perfect, not certain, just ready, it opens. It opens through stillness, through laughter, through tears that come for no reason at all. It opens when you stop resisting your own depth. And in that space, you do not become more spiritual. You become more real. Because reality, true reality, is not the noise. It is the field beneath it. The quiet intelligence weaving all things. The gentle electricity of awareness itself. You are not separate from it. You are it. You are the field remembering itself, one breath at a time. If this stirs something in you, even faintly, let it. Let the not knowing sit beside you like an old friend. Let your spine unwind. Let your jaw release. There is nothing to chase here, only something to receive. If you feel lost, good. It means the map you are using no longer fits the terrain you're about to explore, and the terrain is not outside. It is within. Let's continue there. There is a space, not physical, not even mental. It begins to open when you stop trying to make sense of everything and instead begin to feel everything. It is a space without shape, without destination, but it holds the pattern of all becoming. You're in it now, not because you understand it, but because you allowed yourself to listen a little longer than usual. The moment you stopped trying to solve your life and simply let yourself be in it, breath by breath, that's when the membrane began to thin. And here's what becomes clear in this softened state. Reality is not only aware of you, it is listening for you, not your words, not your plans, but your vibration, your coherence, your willingness to stop pretending that your light must remain hidden. The quantum field isn't a place you visit. It's the ocean you're already swimming in. But when you become still enough, it starts to mirror your deepest frequencies with exquisite accuracy. This is why healing feels like unraveling, because it isn't just you feeling better. It's the universe reorganizing itself around a truer version of you. And in that reorganization, strange things begin to occur. Things you'll try to explain with logic at first, but which resist tidy definitions. People will call and you'll say, "I was just thinking about you." A door will open that felt long sealed. A chance meeting will echo a dream you had years ago. You'll notice patterns that defy statistics, words that appear again and again, symbols that follow you, across mediums, across days. But the real transformation isn't in these external events. It's in how you feel when they arrive. It's in the moment you stop feeling surprised, not because you've grown numb, but because you've grown aligned. The frequency you hold has begun to precede you. The quantum field is echoing your shift. And now the outer world begins to match the song you've been humming internally for months, maybe years. There is no need to control the pace of this shift, only to notice it, only to bless it, only to witness your own capacity to change the channel from within. But the truth is, this kind of awareness can also feel lonely at first. Not because you are alone, but because so much of the world still moves in the trance, the hypnosis of disconnection. You may find yourself longing for conversation, but feeling alien in rooms filled with noise. You may crave touch, but flinch from the energies that come without presence. You may want to explain what's unfolding within you, but the words fall flat in language shaped for performance, not truth. And this, too, is part of the awakening, the emptying, the shedding, the dissolving of connections that were built on the scaffolding of your past vibration, the grief of losing what once fit you. And yet, underneath the ache of that unraveling is a new coherence waiting to be born. You are not losing people. You are making space for resonance. You are not becoming better. You are becoming clear. And in that clarity, you begin to attract not just outcomes, but frequencies, relationships, places, moments that match the music of your soul. Still, the mind will resist. It has been trained to measure progress in metrics and milestones, not in moments of stillness or in how deeply you felt your own heart today. The mind will say, "But what have you done?" And the soul will reply, "I've become more aligned." The world may not yet have a certificate for that, but the field does. The field responds to the quality of your being, not the quantity of your doing. And yet, this doesn't mean action disappears. Quite the opposite. When you begin to live in resonance, your actions become inevitable, like waves arriving on shore. You stop acting from fear and begin moving from coherence. You speak when silence would betray your truth. You rest when your nervous system asks. You create not to prove, but to express what is now overflowing. And that expression ripples. Not always visibly, not always instantly, but always energetically. You are weaving timelines with every word, every choice, every breath. You are living as the universe remembering itself in form. And what about the fear? It doesn't vanish, but it changes. It stops being a command and starts being a companion. Fear once said, "You can't." Now it says, "Are you sure you're ready?" And instead of collapsing, you check in with your coherence. Instead of shrinking, you return to your breath. Instead of running, you remain present enough to ask, what is this fear trying to protect? That question alone is a portal. Most. Fear is simply the echo of an outdated map. One that says, if you stand out, you'll be exiled. Or if you speak your truth, you'll be harmed. Or if you succeed, they'll abandon you. These maps are old, not just from this life, but from others, from ancestors, from timelines layered beside yours. Your nervous system remembers what your conscious mind has never seen. But coherence rewrites those maps, not by force, but by frequency. It teaches the body that visibility is safe, that expansion is not betrayal, that abundance is not a theft from others, but a beacon that helps them remember what is possible. And so the journey deepens. You stop asking, what do I want to manifest? And begin asking, what wants to come through me when I'm fully aligned? This is not about bypassing desire, but about purifying it, refining it until it stops being a reaction to lack and starts becoming a transmission of truth. And in that place, the strange becomes natural. You begin to speak things before they happen. You begin to feel timelines forming around your state of being. You begin to taste the texture of an outcome before it arrives. And you stop needing certainty to trust the next step. This is what true manifestation is. Not wishful thinking, but vibrational anchoring. Not fantasy, but frequency. And when the field feels your full coherence, it responds with precision. Not always the outcome you expected, but always the one that aligns with your signal. This is why practices matter, not as rituals of control, but as rituals of remembrance. Breath, movement, stillness, sound, they are not just techniques. They are language. They tell the body that it is safe to let go of vigilance. They tell the heart it can open without waiting for proof. They tell the energy field, I am home in myself again. And from that home, everything changes. You don't wait for signs. You become the sign. You don't wait for peace. You emanate it. You don't chase alignment. You become so congruent within that everything not matching your frequency naturally falls away. And yes, this can feel like loss. But loss is sometimes the signal that alignment has become non-negotiable, that you no longer vibrate in apology, that your boundaries are not walls, but tuning forks, gently saying, if you wish to remain in my life, tune to presence. And now, the world itself begins to feel different. Not because it has changed, but because your lens has. You start noticing details you once missed, the warmth in a stranger's smile, the ache behind someone's anger, the softness of sunlight on an ordinary afternoon. These are not coincidences. They are signals, signs that your perception has widened, that you are no longer scanning for threats, but attuning to beauty, that the field around you, once dense with confusion, is now clear enough to reflect your soul back to you. This is not a peak state. It is not reserved for gurus or mystics. It is available to anyone willing to feel deeply and listen honestly. You, right now, Dot, and if all of this still feels far away, let this part land gently. You don't have to master anything. You only have to remember, one moment at a time. You are already in the shift. You are already through the first veil. The fact that you're still listening, still here, still open, is proof enough. You're not late. You're not broken. You're exactly where the field needs you to be. In this very breath, in this very frequency. Stay there. We'll go deeper still. There is a moment when everything becomes so quiet that you can hear the hum beneath reality, not as sound, but as a pressureless presence, like the warmth of sunlight resting on your skin without demanding your attention. You reach this state not by pushing harder, but by ceasing the effort entirely. It happens when you stop racing against life, when your breath slows not because you force it, but because something in you remembers, there is no threat here. There is only now. This is the true center of coherence, not a pinnacle to climb, but a softness to sink into. And in this place, the field doesn't just respond to you, it reveals you. Layers begin to fall away, not with drama, but with gentleness. The identity you built to survive no longer needs to fight. The story you clung to begins to dissolve in the clarity of presence. You are not losing yourself. You are meeting the self that never required protection in the first place. That self has always been watching, waiting for you to turn inward with enough stillness to notice it blinking back. Here, in this expanded intimacy with yourself, you begin to feel this living threads that connect you to everything else. Not just people or emotions, but information. A knowing that arrives before proof. A vision that surfaces before logic can name it. You begin to recognize that intuition is not guessing. It is the vibrational alignment between your consciousness and the underlying structure of the quantum field. You are not predicting the future. You are listening to the song that is already playing in a nearby timeline. And the more coherent your inner field becomes, the clearer that music sounds. This is why intuition often defies logic, because it is operating on a level beneath the visible. It is your frequency registering a match or mismatch before your mind catches up. You knew it. You just didn't have a word for it until now. Let this be that word. Let this be the permission to stop dismissing what you feel in your bones just because it cannot be measured by those who forgot how to feel. But coherence also brings a new form of responsibility, not heavy or burdensome, but sacred. You realize that every thought you let root, every emotion you allow to anchor, becomes a kind of offering to the field. And this is not about perfection or moral policing. It is about understanding your power with gentleness. You don't have to be flawless, but you do get to be intentional, because the energy you carry influences every room you enter, every space you touch. Your vibration is not private. It is participatory. And when you move through the world with self-awareness, when your nervous system becomes a vessel of safety, instead of tension, when your gaze softens instead of judging, others feel it. They may not name it, but they respond. A child relaxes in your arms. A stranger opens up without knowing why. A friend breaks down because they feel safe enough to. These are not random moments. These are signs that your signal is beginning to stabilize, that your inner field has become a sanctuary in a world that forgot how to feel safe. And here, in the sanctuary of self-remembrance, you begin to feel into something even deeper, the layers of consciousness that transcend this life, the echoes of other timelines, the fragments of selves you've never met, but who live within your energetic memory. You may begin to dream differently, not just surreal stories, but transmissions. You may begin to feel grief that has no name, fear that has no origin, or joy that feels too large for your current story. This is not confusion. This is convergence. You are gathering your fragmented awareness across time. Some traditions call it soul retrieval. Others call it quantum integration. But no matter the term, the essence is this: you are becoming whole again. You are no longer pretending that the present is the only thread in your tapestry. You are listening to your fullness and inviting all of it home. And home is not a place, but a frequency. It is the state in which nothing within you needs to hide, where the child, the warrior, the mystic, the doubter, the healer, and the lost all get a seat at the table. You stop trying to edit your internal landscape. You start honoring it as sacred ground. And with this shift comes another, a quiet dignity. You no longer need to explain your path to those who don't see it. You no longer chase validation in places where resonance has never lived. You realize that clarity often comes with solitude, but never with isolation. The deeper you go inward, the more vast the connection becomes outward. You sense the ripples of your becoming in those around you. You notice that the more you return to truth, the more others seem to find their way without you even saying a word. This is the language of frequency. It requires no translation. It remembers for you. And when challenge arises as it's still, will you respond not from collapse, but from curiosity? Instead of spiraling into, why me? You pause into, what's here for me? You begin to see that every contraction is not an ending, but an invitation. Every pattern repeating is not punishment, but a portal not yet walked through. You stop expecting a problem-free life and begin living a present-filled one. Even suffering, when met with presence, becomes transformative. You do not bypass it. You integrate it. You ask it what it came to teach. You feel it fully, but you no longer fuse your identity to it. This is not spiritual bypass. This is energetic maturity. The kind that comes not from avoiding the dark, but from knowing you are light enough to hold it without disappearing. And what of purpose? It begins to shift too. It stops being a noun and becomes a verb. You stop searching for a single role and begin living as a presence. Your purpose is not a career. It is the coherence you bring into every interaction, every room, every breath. When you are aligned, you could be sweeping a floor or leading a revolution. The field doesn't care. It registers the frequency, not the form. This is liberation. This is the end of striving and the beginning of allowing. When you live like this, the right actions emerge not from effort, but from inevitability. You become a channel for something larger than personality, and yet deeply intimate to your being. You are no longer afraid of being misunderstood, because your presence speaks more clearly than your words ever could. Now, you may begin to feel the pulse of the field around you in a new way. Not just as background, but as participant. You may feel as though the air itself carries codes, that the ground is listening. That silence is not empty, but pregnant with awareness. This is not madness. This is perception, retuned. You are. Remembering what ancient mystics whispered, what children know before the world tells them to forget, that the veil is paper thin, that the division between matter and meaning is artificial, that you are not in the universe, you are the universe, momentarily wearing a name. And when you walk in the world with this remembering, everything shifts, not just for you, but for the collective. You become an axis of reconfiguration, a soft node of coherence in a tangled field. Without trying, without forcing, your presence becomes a tuning fork that makes others start to resonate differently. You are never here to convince. You are here to be. And being, in its fullest, softest, truest form, is the most powerful signal. The universe can receive. When you embody it, timelines rearrange, paths open, the right people appear, not because you chase them, but because your frequency called them home. Even in silence, you become a prayer the world has long forgotten how to say. Not a plea, but a declaration. This is what wholeness looks like. Not perfect, not polished, but fully here. Fully human, fully divine. And in this remembering, your life stops feeling like a problem to fix and starts becoming a sacred pattern to explore. If you felt any flicker of truth in these words, even a faint trembling under the surface of your skin, trust it. That's your coherence rising. That's the portal widening. That's the quiet music of your own becoming, echoing from somewhere just beyond the veil. And that veil, it's thinner than you think. It's thinner than breath. It is as thin as a single choice, to live from the part of you that already knows. Made it farther than most ever do, not in distance, but in depth. The world rewards acceleration, but this path rewards presence. And presence, the kind you're living into now, is not passive. It is the most radical act of creation. When you become still, the surface turbulence of the world begins to settle. And what lies beneath it, the quiet intelligence, the primal coherence, the pulse of unified being, begins to rise. You don't have to reach for it. You receive it. This is the paradox of becoming. It feels like surrender, but it creates more movement than force ever could. You are no longer broadcasting survival. You are becoming a channel for peace, for wisdom, for the subtle language of energy that speaks in chills, in knowing glances, in sudden clarity that arrives with no origin and no explanation. This is what happens when the field begins to trust your signal, when your nervous system stops screaming and starts listening. And when you listen deeply enough, the world starts to speak differently, not louder, just clearer. Like a friend who doesn't need to raise their voice because you finally stopped interrupting the silence. Now, the coherence within you starts to loop outward, not as effort, but as atmosphere. Your presence becomes palpable. Others may not understand why they feel safer around you, why their own thoughts quiet down, why their grief rises in your presence and then softens. But you'll know. You'll know because you've walked through your own shadows. You've sat with your own rage without needing it to perform. You've held your sorrow without turning it into spectacle. You've listened to your own unspoken longings and dared to honor them without demanding they make sense. And all of this inner work begins to accumulate as an unseen currency, not for prestige, not for reward, but as gravity. Coherence becomes your gravity. And from that gravity, everything begins to orbit differently. You stop reaching, you start radiating. And the field, sensitive, listening, always mirroring, begins to shape itself around you. But this shaping is not linear. It does not obey the logic of spreadsheets or schedules. It flows like water. Sometimes it carves gently. Sometimes it floods. And sometimes it recedes so far back, you wonder if you've lost it forever, only to return with force, clarity, and gift. When you're aligned, even delays are sacred. Even uncertainty becomes fertile. This is the frequency of trust. Not blind optimism, but embodied knowing. A trust that lives not in thought, but in breath, in bone. In the soft way, your body relaxes. When you stop needing to control the unfolding. When you understand that you are not waiting for the right moment, you are the right moment. And everything you've feared, every storm you've survived, every heartbreak you've absorbed into your chest, it all becomes compost now. Fuel, wisdom, nutrient-rich memory, supporting a future your mind hasn't seen yet, but your soul already recognizes. And yes, old identities will still knock. They'll whisper, "Are you sure this is who you are now?" They'll beg to be reworn like comfortable clothes that no longer fit. But you'll notice the scratch, the squeeze, the strange silence in your gut when you try them on. You'll notice how your breath shortens when you pretend you don't know what you know. And this noticing, this simple, sacred awareness becomes your freedom. You no longer need to exile the old self. You simply stop feeding it. You let it dissolve in the presence of your new signal. And when others try to engage with the version of you that no longer exists, you don't fight. You don't prove. You simply remain coherent. And that coherence becomes the invitation, a quiet mirror asking, "Would you like to meet me here? Or will you stay where I used to be?" Some will meet you. Some won't. And both are sacred. Now the field starts to respond with increasing precision. You think of someone and they message. You feel the pull to go somewhere, and something unfolds that you couldn't have planned, but that feels inevitable in hindsight. These are not coincidences. They are the natural result of alignment. The quantum field is made of patterns and signals, and your frequency, when unblocked, starts to act like a magnet for experiences that match it perfectly. Not always joy, not always ease, but always accuracy. If you are healing, you will. Attract the teacher. If you are expanding, you will meet the mirror. If you are ready to receive, the opportunity will arrive. But the moment you cling, the moment you chase, the moment you try to force the current, that's when static returns. Not as punishment, but as feedback. The field doesn't judge. It simply echoes. And the echo is always in harmony with the note you are holding. So what happens when the signal becomes steady? Not perfect, but consistent? What happens when your nervous system begins to recognize peace, not as boredom, but as home? You begin to create without striving. You begin to connect without performing. You begin to love without contracting. Because safety, once internalized, becomes your natural broadcast. And the safer you feel in your own skin, the more safety others feel in your presence. This is not spiritual idealism. This is nervous system reality. The human body, when coherent, becomes a healing instrument. Your eyes become soothing. Your touch becomes anchoring. Your silence becomes a sanctuary. And this isn't about charisma. It's about resonance. You don't need to raise your vibration through manic positivity. You need to clean your signal, to remove the interference, to let the transmission of your true self emerge unfiltered. And when it does, when you live from this unfiltered state, you will feel strange at first, because joy without justification is rare. Peace without apology is unfamiliar. You may look around and wonder why others seem tense, rushed, distracted. You may feel like a visitor in your own life, watching a world that still believes in struggle as identity. But you are not here to fix the world. You are here to hold a different frequency within it. That is your contribution. That is your leadership. Not in volume, but in vibration. You'll know when you're aligned because effort becomes elegant. Movement becomes meaningful. And your very presence, without strategy, without spectacle, starts to shift the emotional architecture of every room you enter. And yet, none of this makes you immune to challenge. In fact, sometimes your coherence will call in challenge, not to break you, but to test your frequency in the wild. You will be asked, can you remain rooted when others swirl in projection? Can you stay soft when the world hardens around fear? Can you choose alignment when reaction would be easier? These are the rights of the new human, not the spiritual bypasser, not the endlessly enlightened persona, but the fully present being who chooses to feel deeply without drowning, to hold power without dominance, to speak truth without aggression. The one who walks with the invisible crown of coherence, not to be admired, but to make the space around them more breathable, because that's the quiet gift of this journey. Breath. When you're coherent, your breath leads. Your body becomes an oracle. Your heartbeat becomes your compass. And life, not just spiritual life, but ordinary life, begins to shimmer with new intimacy. Washing dishes becomes meditation. A smile exchanged with a stranger becomes alchemy. You stop, waiting for peak moments, and begin recognizing that every moment, when met fully, is a portal. You no longer seek escape, not because life is always easy, but because you are no longer escaping yourself. You have become your own safe place. And from that sanctuary, all things become possible. So what remains now is not a destination, but a devotion, to stay in tune, to return when you drift, to forgive yourself when you contract, and to walk with the grace of one who remembers that the veil is always thinner than it seems. You are not becoming the light. You are the light, remembering its rhythm in a world addicted to forgetting. Let that rhythm continue. The field is listening. The next signal is already forming. There comes a quiet turning point in the journey, not marked by ceremony or applause, but by a subtle shift in the way you inhabit your own skin. It's the moment you no longer need the external world to confirm your alignment, because you can feel it humming in the texture of your own breath. You become a tuning fork, not because you've figured everything out, but because you've stopped pretending you're separate from the intelligence that shapes the stars. You don't speak it with arrogance. You don't hold it with pride. You carry it like a sacred ember, a warmth that doesn't need to burn to be real. And from this gentle clarity, the next phase of coherence begins. Embodiment. Not just sensing the field, but walking as it. Not just remembering the truth, but letting it shape the way you love, the way you create, the way you hold space for others who are just beginning to remember themselves. This is where the shift deepens. You become not just aware of energy. You become an artist of it. And the art is subtle. It's not performed on stages or announced with flashing signs. It's how you hold a moment without rushing it. How you allow someone else to speak without preparing your reply. How you feel the contractions of the world without losing your expansion. Every interaction becomes a canvas for your frequency. Every silence becomes an instrument. Every word you choose or choose not to speak carries weight in the architecture of the moment. This is not perfectionism. This is presence. You're not editing yourself into some spiritual ideal. You're dissolving the parts that were never true to begin with. And in their absence, a deeper self begins to move. One that doesn't need to justify its intuition. One that doesn't need to translate its knowing into someone else's language. One that radiates coherence so fully that it becomes impossible to return to the old way of living without feeling instantly, painfully out of tune. And in this tuning, relationships begin to transform. Some will fall away gently, like leaves, released in autumn, not because they were wrong, but because they were rooted in an older frequency. You no longer resent them. You bless them, because they help shape the terrain you've now transcended. Others will remain, but shift, meeting you in new resonance, or learning to adjust to the quiet steadiness you now carry. And then there are those who will arrive anew, not drawn by your image, but by your signal. They'll appear in strange, timings, unlikely places, with synchronicities wrapped around their presence like invisible ribbons. You'll feel them before you understand them. You'll recognize them not with your mind, but with your cells. And this recognition won't come from shared hobbies or surface traits, but from the deeper hum. We are vibrating at the same rhythm. In these connections, effort will not be the bridge, coherence will. Yet this doesn't mean these relationships will be free from challenge. True resonance does not mean perpetual ease. It means shared commitment to coherence. It means meeting each other not through performance, but through presence. You'll be asked to stay open when your wounds want to close. You'll be invited to listen when your defenses want to explain. You'll have to discern between the voice of intuition and the echo of past pain. But when both people are committed to staying tuned, not just to each other, but to truth, the relationship becomes a sacred mirror. Not a cage, not a cure, but a co-creation. A living, breathing field where evolution is welcome and truth is safe. And from these relationships, whether romantic, platonic, or otherwise, a new kind of collective coherence begins to take shape. A frequency shared not through ideology, but through embodiment. And embodiment, you begin to realize, is the most honest form of wisdom. It cannot be faked. It does not require credentials. It shows itself in your nervous system, in the way you react when things go wrong, in the way you show up when no one is watching. This is where coherence becomes integrity. Not moral righteousness, but energetic congruence. Your thoughts, feelings, and actions begin to align. Not perfectly, not always, but with increasing rhythm. You feel when something is out of tune. And instead of ignoring it, you adjust. You pause. You breathe. You recalibrate. You make decisions not from urgency, but from knowing. You no longer chase timelines that don't feel like home. You no longer sacrifice your signal to avoid discomfort. And this alignment begins to stack, moment by moment, until your very life becomes a feedback loop of truth. In this loop, even the unknown becomes intimate. You stop fearing what's ahead because you know the quality of what you carry. The future stops feeling like a cliff and begins to feel like a field waiting to be walked into. You understand that life is not asking you for a flawless plan. It's asking you for availability, for readiness to meet what arises with the full weight of your presence. And in that availability, something miraculous begins to emerge. Your dreams, once vague or scattered, start to crystallize. Not because you've chased them harder, but because you've aligned with the frequency they require. The universe is not withholding your future. It's waiting for your coherence. And as that coherence stabilizes, opportunities begin to appear with a strange elegance. You find yourself saying yes to things that feel like home, and no to things that only mimic it. The path forward becomes less about effort, more about listening, not to voices outside you, but to the field within. And now, something ancient stirs in your awareness. A memory, perhaps, not of a place, but of a state, a way of being that feels simultaneously new and older than time. It may come in dreams, or in waking flashes, or in the quiet tears you shed for no obvious reason. It's not nostalgia. It's not fantasy. It's recognition. You are remembering a version of you that never left, only quieted. This is not your higher self as something above you. This is your whole self, rising through the layers of forgetfulness. And in this rising, the most ordinary moments begin to shimmer. A ray of light across your floor feels like a message. A breeze across your cheek feels like a nod from the unseen. You are no longer looking for signs. You are walking as one. You are no longer trying to become spiritual. You are remembering that everything, the grocery store, the heartbreak, the coffee, the silence is already part of the divine choreography. And you begin to notice, the more you soften, the more power you hold. Not power over others, but power over your own state. The power to stay calm in chaos. The power to remain loving when met with fear. The power to choose alignment over performance. This power is not flashy. It does not need to convince. It radiates. It speaks without raising its voice. And in this quiet strength, you begin to feel the future differently. Not as a list of goals, but as a frequency calling you forward. You stop asking, what should I do? And begin asking, what do I want to become available for? This shift from control to receptivity, from strategy to surrender, doesn't mean you stop acting. It means your actions become inevitable. And those actions, born from alignment, carry the kind of resonance that ripples far beyond your sight. And now, if you listen closely, you'll feel it. A subtle invitation. Not from me, not from the screen, but from the very field you've been walking through. It's asking, are you willing to live like this? Not just feel it, not just understand it, but embody it? The choice is always yours. The portal never forces. But the longer you stand in coherence, the more impossible it becomes to return to fragmentation. The old survival patterns lose their flavor. The noise of the world fades into background static. And your body, your heart, your breath, they become the most trusted instruments in your symphony. You stop chasing alignment and start living as alignment. You become not a seeker of signs, but a signal. And every step you take becomes an echo, reshaping the fabric of possibility, not just for yourself, but for all who share this field with you. Eventually, you begin to understand that this entire journey, from awakening to integration to embodiment, was never about becoming someone else. It was always about becoming more truly, intimately, unshakably you. And not the you the world trained you to be. Not the curated identity you crafted for safety, but the timeless consciousness that has watched behind your eyes since the beginning, quietly waiting for the moment you turn inward and remember. That remembrance doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself as a grand revelation. It arrives like a hush, like an exhale you didn't know you'd been holding. And in that exhale, life begins to reorganize. Not because you've mastered anything, but because you've stopped pretending you need to. You stop asking for external signs and start recognizing that your being is the sign. That every breath you take in full presence is a signal to the field, I am ready. And the field, ever listening, ever mirroring, responds not with approval or rejection, but with alignment. Always alignment. And now the ground beneath your life begins to feel different. Not because its substance has changed, but because your feet touch it differently. Your relationship with reality shifts from resistance to intimacy. You stop treating discomfort as a mistake. You stop labeling confusion as failure. You start seeing everything, even heartbreak, even waiting, even stillness, as part of the pulse. A pulse of becoming. You understand that energy doesn't move in straight lines. It spirals. It circles back, not to punish you, but to refine you. Old emotions return not to haunt you, but to be held by a deeper version of you, the one that didn't exist last time they visited. Patterns repeat, not because you're broken, but because you're now ready to meet them with coherence. And this changes everything. Your life stops feeling like a puzzle to solve and starts feeling like a symphony to tune. You're not here to get it perfect. You're here to get it resonant. And resonance does not mean constant calm. It means clarity within motion. It means being able to feel deeply without being overtaken. To move through grief without collapsing into identity. To witness the world's chaos without absorbing its frequency. You are not bypassing pain. You are expanding your capacity to hold it without losing your alignment. And in doing so, you become something rare. You become a place where others can remember. Not because you give answers, but because your presence softens their own noise. Because your nervous system, now steady, becomes a lighthouse in the storm. You begin to recognize this not as burden, but as gift. You don't need to teach. You only need to stay tuned. And your tuning, humble, quiet, unforced, does more for the world than 1,000 declarations of intent ever could. At this stage, even your relationship with time begins to shift. You stop racing toward futures. You stop regretting imagined pasts. You start inhabiting the now as though it's holy, because it is. You realize that every quantum possibility you've dreamed of already exists, not ahead of you, but beside. You, waiting for your signal to match. And this matching doesn't come through effort. It comes through coherence. You no longer chase the life you want. You attune to it. You become it in micro-expression, in internal orientation, in emotional consistency. And then the field can't help but reflect it. Not instantly, not always in the way your mind predicted, but always accurately. This is what it means to live quantumly. To understand that your reality is not built by force, but by frequency. And frequency is shaped by attention, by intention, by the emotional music you allow to become your background song. And that music matters, not just for you, but for the collective. Every coherent being becomes an amplifier for clarity. Every moment of presence you offer into the shared field creates room for someone else to breathe more easily. This is not metaphor. This is entanglement. This is how consciousness evolves, not in explosions of mass enlightenment, but in quiet ripples of inner alignment, multiplied silently across time. You are part of that multiplication. Every time you choose to respond rather than react, you send out a signal. Every time you sit with discomfort instead of disowning it, you become a field walker. Every time you meet your own chaos with breath, you alter the probability structure of the world. You may never see its full effects, but the field does. A field never forgets a coherent signal. It stores it like gravity. It echoes it across moments, across generations. This is the real legacy, not what you built, but who you became in the unseen space between events. And in this becoming, love changes. It stops being something you seek and starts being something you are. Not romantic love, not performative love, but the deep, still love that radiates from every cell when you realize there is nothing left to earn. You stop asking to be chosen. You stop needing to be proven worthy. You know that you are the field, remembering itself through form. That everything you were told to chase already exists inside your alignment. And from this knowing, you love differently. Not in grasping, not in sacrifice, but in presence. You love by witnessing, by listening, by staying present when another forgets who they are. By holding resonance even when the other can't, not as martyrdom, but as power. The quiet power of not losing yourself in someone else's storm. And the even deeper power of inviting them, wordlessly, back into coherence. Now, in this space you've carved, this signal you've steadied, you begin to feel what true surrender means. Not giving up, not collapsing, but relaxing into the intelligence that holds galaxies and atoms in the same breath. You no longer need to push the river. You become the river. You trust its curves, its depths, its delays. You stop needing to understand why every stone is there. You simply feel for the current and let it carry you. This is not passivity. This is participation, active yielding, conscious cooperation with the quantum intelligence that is already unfolding the life that matches your deepest signal. You still choose, you still move, but you move from flow, not from fracture. You move like music, you act like water, and everything you touch begins to remember its own natural rhythm. And then, often in a moment, no different from any other, you realize the portal never closed. It was never a door. It was never outside of you. It was your awareness all along. The awareness that sees without judgment. The awareness that listens without defense. The awareness that returns again and again, no matter how long you've drifted, with the same gentle invitation. Come back to coherence. Come back to now. And you do, not because you're told to, but because you've tasted what it's like to live from signal instead of static. You've felt what it's like to be home in your own field. And no matter how often you forget, something in you always remembers. That remembrance is your compass. It is your anchor. It is the pulse beneath your becoming dot. So if you've come this far, through the spirals, through the shimmers, through the silences, know this, you are not lost. You are not late. You are not broken. You are simply mid-bloom, and the field is waiting, as it always has been, for your full unfurling. Not tomorrow, not once you've proven yourself, but now, as you are. Coherence is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the place from which all true becoming flows. And from here, from this gentle readiness, the rest of your life begins to sing a new song, one only you can hear, but one that changes everything. And so, here you are, not at the end, but at the quiet edge of something newly remembered. Nothing needs to be solved now. Nothing needs to be fixed. Just breathe. Let what has landed continue to echo gently through your field. Let your body integrate in stillness what the mind cannot rush. You've not simply heard a story. You've realigned with a deeper rhythm. One that doesn't speak in urgency, but in the hush of trust. The portal you stepped through, it is still open. Always was. But now you know where it lives. Not in the stars, not in secret teachings, but in the softness of your own awareness. You are allowed to return to this feeling whenever you wish. You are allowed to pause, to feel, to realign. Because this frequency is not temporary. It is your home note. Let it carry you as you re-enter the world. And if this story met you where you needed, then perhaps there are more waiting, echoes of your remembering. Subscribe to our channel so we can meet again next time. Other stories are also waiting for you, ready when you are.